Life is a series of encounters. The only real thing you can do is increase the quality of those encounters. Think about that. Life is a series of encounters. We get all wrapped up in all these things that we believe, okay? But what's really going on? I'm going to walk out this door behind me and I'm going to talk to my wife. I'm going to have an encounter with my wife. I'm going to go to bed later tonight. I'm going to have an encounter with that bed. I'm going to eat food later and I'm going to have an encounter with that food. Okay? I'm going to have thoughts. I'm going to have an encounter with those thoughts. And what do I do with them? I'm going to have an encounter with the chair, with the table. I'm going to have an encounter with my employer on Monday morning. I'm going to have an encounter with our FSI group on Wednesday evening. I'm having an encounter with 3 computer monitors and a live stream set up right now. I'm having an encounter. Life is a series of encounters. And really the only thing that you can do, so forget everything else. Forget everything that you think is true and real and good and all this. Just think about what would it take, like how do you want your encounters to go? If hunger and thirst after righteousness, Matthew 5:6. What is right? What is the right encounter to have? What is the right way? Jesus is the way. What is the right way for me to have an encounter with my wife when I walk out this door behind me when this live stream is over? What's the right way to do that? And when I have an encounter that goes poorly, that I don't like, doesn't go in a way that's agreeable, what do I do to make the next encounter be better? What do? So I want you to start thinking of this meditatively. I want you to realize that set all your beliefs aside and realize that your life is a series of encounters. And what can you do to make those encounters better? I have a video called Why Christians Can't Encounter God. And I highly recommend that you watch that. And so some people would object. And they will give a knee-jerk reaction. They will say, well, I'm just going to focus on encountering God directly. The problem with that is that you cannot do that for 2 reasons. First reason that you cannot encounter God directly is because God is not the Hebraic Megazeus model that you have made him out to be. That God that you think you can encounter isn't there to be encountered. So you need to stop having a false model of God. The second reason you can't encounter God is because no man hath seen God at any time. I'm on the cruise boat. I never saw the engine, but I can feel it through the floor. Your encounters with God must be mediated by something. Now it's up to you whether you see this as a barrier or as an opportunity, as a conduit. Now, when I'm standing on the floor on the cruise ship, I can either see that as, oh, I can't see the engine from here, or I can feel the engine through the floor. It all depends on my disposition. To some people, all of this material world is blocking their access to God. To others, all of this material world is mediating their access to God, like the floor on the 5th deck of the cruise ship. It all depends on your disposition, what you do with what's around you. Some people find God nowhere, others see God everywhere. God is not so obtuse as to overestimate his ability to pre-specify relevance. That is an error that only humans commit. The 10 commandments in Exodus 20 and the rest of the 613 mitzvot commandments were adaptable for a period of time, but God would send prophets and leaders for specific situations. He also eventually sent Ecclesiastes 3, where we find that there is an appropriate time for some things and then appropriate times for other things. We cannot program people with perfect appropriateness. And I should probably underline that. It's what we think we can do when we send people to seminary and train them and all that. But then, if we're always looking back to like the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith or the Nicene Creed, we're always looking backwards to these things, it turns out that we have things like a gender crisis that nobody knows how to face. Because we're so busy looking backwards, nobody is anticipating what's coming, and nobody is adapting to the flow of the river that's ahead of them. Now, when I talk like this, people think like, oh, I'm advocating becoming like the world. No. And as I told somebody recently in an email, I'm not advocating that you become like the world. I'm advocating that you anticipate the punches that it's going to throw your way and mitigate them in advance. That's what I'm advocating. But we can't do that. Christians have no idea what to do with a gender crisis or being in a country that has the lowest level of election result certainty that we've had ever, or in the middle of COVID or whatever the next pandemic is. We have no idea what to do about these things as Christians because we spend too much time looking in the back trying to be right and orthodox and no idea how to anticipate the punches that are coming our way and or the rocks in the river that we need to avoid with our canoe or whatever you want to call it. You see? Nobody's looking ahead. Nobody's looking ahead for what's coming our way and using adaptive wisdom for how to navigate these waters. We have no wisdom. We're not cultivating wisdom. We cannot program people with perfect appropriateness. Instead, we must attempt to cultivate wisdom in people. Jesus comes along with his 8 Beatitudes, which gives hearers something to strive for, gives you 8 metrics, something to practice, something to ponder, something to contemplate, something to be, rather than just something to have or obey. If you're in the mindset like this, you've got all the correct doctrines, you have them. Well, some problems are solved by having things, some problems are solved by being something different. If you want to solve the problem of a war, okay, there's a combination of having and being. You have to have certain things and you have to be certain things. If you want to, you can, if you're in a basketball tournament, you can have the ball and the court and the shoes and the uniform, but you have to be a great player in order to win the tournament. Some problems are solved by being, some problems are solved by having. And we tend to think our Christianity treats every problem like it's solved by having something, like it's solved by having correct beliefs. That is not one of the Beatitudes. Blessed are they who have the correct beliefs. Not one of the Beatitudes.